All right. Hey, everyone. So it's good to have you with us today. Just to clarify, you heard me at the end say that I'm on my way to Israel and Jordan, and that was true at the time. It is not accurate to say that now. I'm not going to Israel and Jordan as far as I know. I will be here. I will not only be here in the States, but we are working we're going to be working a lot of hours between our normal duties and getting the new building ready, which is about 15 minutes from here. That is a good financial move for us. You know, I'm tasked with quite a bit of responsibility. One of those is to be a good steward of the gifts that come into United Israel, and so this is going to allow us to reduce our rent by more than 50%. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'll be in between other things going live and teaching Hebrew, which, by the way, our first session is Monday night. We're going to be doing a lot of wall prep and painting. And if any of you live close enough and you want to join me in that, I cannot tell you how fun it is to paint. Some of you have never painted with me in the past, but we make that fun. We talk about all kind of cool Bible stuff. So if that sweetens the deal for you and you want to come down and do that, I'm just picking. No. But one more point on that, and then we're going to get into some really great discussion because this is the part where I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me some of your comments on the material that we covered today from Torah portion Bechukotai, Leviticus chapter 26:3 through the end of the book. But I will say, tentatively, don't buy tickets or anything yet, but I am hopeful to have sort of a September the 1st is a good day, a good weekend. That weekend, it happens to be Labor Day weekend, to do a grand opening at the new building in Jackson, Louisiana. So if we can pull that off, and some of you just hadn't, you were here not too long ago, but maybe some of you can join me for that, and we'll have some good food and festivities, and I'd like to do that. Now I'll announce that as we get closer to make sure that I'm going to make it. I really have to make it. I don't have a choice, right? Because our lease in the current place runs out in July. Okay, enough of that stuff. Let's talk about Bible. Let's talk about some really good let's get into some good stuff and some bad stuff. Remember, I told you that in Leviticus 26, a lot of times people take Leviticus 26 and they say, hey, that's another version of what we read in Deuteronomy 27 and 28, the blessings and the curses. But one of the things that I want to start with, maybe to poke a little bit and get some comments going, I see Clody's already raised her hand, is to say that Leviticus 26 never uses the words blessing, blessed, or cursing, cursed, cursed. So let's see what Clody's got to say. Clody, help straighten us out here. Tell us what you got going on. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. It's good to see your smiling face. How are you?
Ah, I'm good. Shabbat Shalom. I
Shabbat
just
Shalom.
have a question that I have it all of this time. I mean, I'm always pondering
Okay.
on it. So I know that when I started really listening to the voice and really reading with the attention to understand and to do, uh, I started to straighten my life. I started to do what the word was asking of me. And I understood that sometimes we got that feeling that something is not right and is not going right. And we understand that by correcting ourselves, lives get better and we start walking with God. But then again, I think my question, I think that this could be a question for the end of this after class discussion. However, I really want to ask, is there any collective responsibility because we always say that we have to do right and we have to make the commandments and we have to listen to God's voice. But then where does the individual begin to differ from the collective?
Let me make sure I understand where you're coming from. Tell me a little bit more about what you're asking, because I think I'm almost getting it. I'm just a little bit slower maybe, but I want to make sure, because I think what you've raised is something that would be a great discussion for the group.
What I'm aiming at is how we listen, we read sometimes or many times throughout the Bible about generations. When this generation of wrongdoers, evildoers will perish, will die, then let's say people will start having God's blessings. Even so, you have that from the first generation before they enter the land.
Mm-hmm.
When this generation of evildoers perish, and you have it with the 70 years of Jeremiah. Do we have any kind of signs, or can we tell where is our individual responsibility and where we cannot have a say on everything, on anything, because it's something that has to do with the whole generation?
Okay. All right. So the question is whether it's individual or collective on the listening and responding and acting there too, right? So that's a good way. All right. Let's underline that. Let's keep that up. Maybe Carolyn has some comments on that very thing. Good question, Clody. So Shabbat Shalom. Is that all you have? Okay. So Carolyn.
That's all. Shabbat Shalom.
Carolyn, welcome. I assume you are coming to us from France. So
smack dab in the middle of France.
All right. Hey, good to see your smiling face. How are you? That's a picture, but that's okay. I assume that you're smiling and you have some great wisdom to impart.
Well, I would like to address what Clody just said.
Great.
Maybe I can answer what she asked.
Okay.
My take on when the people first refused to go into the land, and God said, I'm going to take them out. Moses said, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You brought them out, you got to take them in. But he said, okay, the ones who refuse to go in are going to die. When they're all dead, their little ones will go in. My comment is, did the parents or the leaders or whoever not tell the children under 20 years of age who were going to be the ones going in? Did they never tell them why their parents were dropping dead like flies until they were all gone? Because it appears that the children didn't learn whatever lesson was there to learn. They didn't listen once they crossed in. They immediately began to disobey. Their leaders began to disobey. The priest Eli didn't teach his sons. His sons were disobedient and God killed his kids. I mean, the next generation evidently was never told why, or they were too stupid to ask, or something's not connecting.
Yeah.
Or am I being hard-hearted Hannah, bringing that up?
Good point, Hannah. No, I'm joking. No, I think that, it's often one thing that I just want to jump in just a minute, but I want other people to give other good comments like you're doing already. I would just put into this question of collective versus individual, have we ever taught our children or advised them a certain way, or if we don't have children, some of you may not, Were you, as a child, ever told something by your parents that you didn't follow? Remember, we have texts like Ezekiel 18, Ezekiel 33, Deuteronomy 26, verse 14, where it says that a person is not responsible for what, a child does or whatever. So we have to remember that. Even if let's say the generation that was doomed to die in the desert, get that alliteration, all those D's, it could be that they did actually say, hey, kids, look, you got to do right, because we're going to die here. It's decreed. Therefore, you need to make sure you follow these things. So it's interesting. Good points, though, Carolyn. Let's keep this rolling. Let's see if Julia can add to the discussion, or maybe something totally different. Hey, Julia, I see your hand raised, and you just have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm ready.
Okay. To speak with what Clody said and then Carolyn, I think we're always on the right track if we remember that God is righteous. And when one of the things it says is people will be responsible for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
We all have free will. There may be people who are under different circumstances, but everyone has free will.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I also think hasn't changed that much is when it comes to children, and I think that this has been from time immemorial, the way that children learn to do things is that they look at their parents. That's how they learn to talk, walk, everything. So to think that the children were not aware of what happened, I don't think it's true. And I think, like what you said, the people who said, ooh, we made a really bad mistake, now we're going to die in the wilderness, they may have told their children every day, look at the mistake we made.
Mm-hmm.
They may have said, I am dying here in the wilderness because of what I did do. I think that's what happened. I also think it's individual. So people, they may have seen their parents die. They've heard all of it, because even when you hear what we have in the book, when Moses is saying what they're saying, they were being taught, they were being talked to, they were being told, and they made their choice to obey or disobey.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what Clody also talked about. I think even though we are individually responsible, there are also consequences. So some of the stuff that may have happened are consequences. There were probably people who were doing exactly what they were supposed to do, but there were many, many more in the nation that didn't.
Uh-huh.
So unfortunately, the consequences were, this is what happened to all. This is what happened because most were.
Yeah.
But when we remember that God is righteous, everybody is responsible for what they do. So to kind of think, oh, things are so bad, does it matter what I do? I think it does, because you're still going to be responsible. If you sin, you're going to be responsible.
You're
so
saying
you
the seed is sown and something's going to grow, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, that's all I got.
Hey, Julia, thanks. Good stuff. Stick around. We might have you back up. Who knows? Sue, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. I hope what I have to say is pertinent.
Oh, it will be. I know it. I can feel it.
You're so sweet. We lived in Jerusalem for about 6 months in hopes of being able to convert full on. So we were in constant contact with Orthodox rabbis and Orthodox Jews. And one of the things that deeply impressed us was that at least the Orthodox don't see themselves as individuals. they see themselves as part of a whole, and that their every action reflects on the larger community, that they have an active part in maintaining that walk with Hashem, not only for themselves personally, but for Israel as a whole. And I think that may be what Moshe was trying to convey to the Israelites at that time. And my question in that was, well, I'm not sure if it's a question, but it makes me think of the Holocaust, when thousands of deeply devout Jews who had devoted their lives to serving Hashem, they were imprisoned and murdered, just like the secular Jews.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that there is a correlation there.
You know, it becomes difficult to differentiate or separate the results or whatever of individuals and groups at times. I remember when I was in the Army, some of you might have military background as well, and there are other examples. My memories of being an 18-year-old in basic training, and one guy messed up and everybody got punished for it. And I used to think, man, that is bad. And listen, I know all of you are holy and righteous. You would never do this. But that night, whoever got us in trouble got what we called a blanket party. You know, and you think, well, that's not right. I mean, everybody picking on that guy. But by goodness, he didn't mess up again. And I would be the guy that messed up. So I'm just saying there is a collective punishment. And, you know, whether you like it or not, it works. Sometimes you see enough people around you get beat down or whatever, and you behave better. One more quick story about the rabbinic, but I want to get your opinions, is there's a story in rabbinic literature. I read it years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in the J.H. Hertz commentary on the Pentateuch and Haftarahs. And I don't remember where, but I can find it. The story is about men in a boat, several men in a boat, and they look and see one of the men in the boat is putting a hole in the hull of the boat. And they said, what are you doing? You're going to cause us to go down. And he said, no. It's just under my seat. So the idea is, obviously, if you put a hole in the boat, and even if it's just under your seat, you affect the hole. So maybe that's a little bit about what Julia was pointing out. So let's see what others. Eric John Nagel from the wonderful state of Louisiana. How are you, my brother?
Excellent. Doing well. The first thing I wanted to ask was, who is suspected or proposed to have written this section of the wilderness story? I mean, is there proof that Deuteronomic, or is it priestly, or?
Good question. Are you ready? I mean,
yeah.
So a big part of the wilderness itinerary literature falls out based on academic source criticism into different camps. Generally, it is associated with other than Deuteronomic. We do have, according to Deuteronomy, we do know that there is a wilderness journey. So let me just straighten that out. And some of you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about. It's okay. But from an academic standpoint, let me put it this way. Let me put that on a shelf quickly. All of the sources in our Pentateuch and even in later biblical literature refer to that time in the wilderness. So let's approach it this way, Eric. It's without a doubt, there's not a biblical writer that would challenge that the children of Israel were in the wilderness, right? You see it in not only in the priestly source, you see it in what we call D. So you see it in Deuteronomy, and you see it in other source material. Now, the details differ, and let me explain. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. In the book of Exodus, we have Jethro is very much a part of that wilderness experience. In fact, he is even approached by Moses in Exodus to assist the children of Israel in navigating through the desert, because the Midianites know their way through the desert. They're like Bedouin in the modern world. And he even says one day to Moses, I see that you're up there standing before the people, and they come to you all day, and this is your whole life, and it's going to be a tough, I suggest that you appoint other leaders. So we have certain stories that come from J and E and P, and we don't see them in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy doesn't even mention Jethro.
Right.
So your question is an excellent question. What I would say is that without any look, there are scholars who are very, very minimalist, who would doubt a lot of the historicity of the wilderness journey. But I would say that anyone who picks up the Bible, even if they see discrepant passages between different sources, would not say that the wilderness itinerary didn't happen. Now, specific to the question is, what about that group of people dying off?
Right.
There is quite a bit that we can get into. I'll let other people talk first, but even in the Moses scroll, there is this idea that the generation had to die off before they entered into the land. So very specific to your question, if that makes sense.
Right, right. And I mean, there's a lot of, at least in my memory of studying through the years, a lot of conflicting things that you can read one way or another way, and depending on what translation, as in a lot of our scripture. But in my opinion, the remnant is kind of like, okay, who's left or who is doing right? And that's a very important thing in my mind. Is it's not going to be everybody.
Yeah.
Even the grass is made to be burnt, and the who is Israel is always been it was my first book that really turned me toward this way.
What book?
Who is Israel by
Batya Wooten. Batya and Angus Wooten. I know them well.
When that resonated with me, it stuck with me all this time, is when you do what we're talking about, Shema, you are Israel.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story. I mean, you have a path, you follow it toward our Father, and whatever you do is a father going to correct his child. Now, if you're not doing what he says, then you're not his child, and it doesn't matter what happens to you because you've decided. There's fine tuning in there, but it's like, do you have to go across the sea or go into heaven to get the Torah? No.
Yeah.
Seems like it's 10 matters. Anyway, that was my observation.
Good observations. And remember, sometimes we have rebellious children. I don't have any rebellious children, have never had that, but I've heard of other people who have, especially Seth. When I talk about good, obedient, listened all the time, Seth is top of the line. Karen, how are you? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
How are you?
So I have put a lot of thought into the, collective consequences and, individuality as well. And I look at it, my children are going to have blessings or cursings depending on the decisions that I made. Even all the way back to, my diet while I'm carrying them, my stress level.
Yeah.
That is going to directly affect the child. What kind of medical procedures I allow them to have or don't allow them to have when they're when I am making decisions for them.
Yeah.
That is going to affect them down the road. What kind of financial situation you're in, that affects your children.
Right.
You know, if you're in extreme poverty, it's going to take a lot for that child to pull themselves out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, the decisions that the mayor makes that affects the entire town, the decisions that the governor makes that affects the entire state. If our president declares war on another country, guess who's at war?
Yeah.
Me. So, you know, in the real world, anything you do affects somebody else. And depending on your level of authority, you know, your decisions can affect a lot more people. Now, when it comes to the individual, I think that's where the listen comes in.
Good point.
So when, you know, because God generally he speaks to an individual and the individual can share, like Jeremiah.
Yep.
But he spoke to an individual. Well, except, you know, a lot of people heard him on the mountain though. But, you know, in my experience, you have to, you know, put yourself in a position to listen, and be ready for that, you know, put your feelers out, not be locked into dogma. And then that's when you hear God's voice, whether it's through a dream, whether it's through somebody else. You know, in my opinion, that's where the listen comes in, and that sometimes can give you direction to focus on this or focus on that, go down this path, go down that path. And eventually, you know, hopefully at some point you'll be on the right path.
Good points, really good points. And just to kind of underscore the main, what I got from the way you kicked that off, decisions and actions, particularly from leaders, can affect many people who totally disagree with them. And, you know, and I'm reminded of the story in Genesis where we have what is called in Genesis 18, Shlosha Anashim, 3 men show up at Abraham's tent, and they're going to destroy, or Jehovah is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And there is a question when Abraham is interceding on the behalf of the people, and he asked the question, should not the judge of all the earth do justice? Meaning, how many would it take for you to spare the whole? Which is another interesting question that I think is fascinating in this field that we're discussing here. But would you, first of all, would you destroy God, would you destroy the good and the bad? I mean, really? Or would you differentiate? And then how many would it take? Just, would it be 100? Would it be 50? Would it be 10 to save the whole? So good. This is some fun stuff. Good philosophical / biblical conversation. Good points, Karen.
I tell my daughter, you know, my oldest one, I made the most mistakes with her because I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
And you know, my youngest is definitely far more healthier and more, you know, has benefited from an education that I had with her that I didn't have with my oldest one. And so I'll apologize to her and say, oh, I'm sorry, you were the test child.
Yeah, that's right.
Make all the mistakes with you so I could, you know, get one better.
That's right. That's right.
That's a joke, but you know, it does. Your behavior affects other people, whether you like it or not.
Yep. No, I know. The oldest sometimes get the best and the worst of life. Real quick, there's a funny little video I saw on social media. First child, and you know, pacifier hits the ground, and the parents scald it, you know, maybe boil it, whatever, and let it cool down and give it. And by the time the last one, you know, pacifier lands in the dirt, and the parent wipes it off and shoves it in the kid's mouth. So, you know, you get some of the good and some of the bad. Good points. Todd and Angel, how are you? Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see both of you today. How are you?
Hi, we're good. Shabbat Shalom. There's been some really good points made today. There's an old adage that no man is an island. We all are interconnected and we all affect each other. But I think that's a different level when you're talking about corporate punishment for a whole nation of people.
Yeah.
And that puts where in the Old Testament, I can't remember who the prophet was that said it, that or who said it.
That's all right.
That each man is responsible for their own sin, but holding punishing the whole nation for the sins of a few would be would make that a lie, because it on the principle.
Excellent point, Angel. If I might, you're picking up on probably one of the great religious questions of all time, and that is, and it stems from the biblical text. You gave a couple of great examples. People, great thinkers of all time, have looked at the biblical text and they've said sort of what you said. They go, now hang on just a second. You're telling me that the God of all creation is going to punish collectively a group of people when not all of those participated in the bad. And so that has raised a flag for many, many people from the beginning of time. It kind of goes to the passage in Genesis that I was talking about, Genesis 18:19, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, people said, hey, you know, Abram says to God, are you going to, the judge of all the earth, not do justice? So I think that's kind of where you're going with this, and it raises that question. Should we take a really close look then at some of these texts which suggest, does God punish all collectively, or is there a way of redemption to be found within the broader category of punishment? In other words, the decree goes forward. Look, everyone's going to get some bad because of the actions here. And then there is a way found within that broad blanket for the innocent to come out unscathed. Now, I may have taken that a little bit further than you intended, but I think you're hitting on some of that.
No, actually, I was thinking a lot of that also.
Good. Well, hopefully, I appreciate your comments, and maybe we'll take this further with the next few. Is that mainly what you were saying, Angel?
Yes.
Excellent. Good stuff.
I got something real quick.
Okay, go
Ross.
ahead. You got the mic.
About what you were talking about, what you and Eric was talking about a minute ago. Kind of a little side note here about the wilderness writing. You know, who wrote the wilderness story and everything else.
Yep.
And it's interesting that in the recognitions, when Peter was talking to Clement, that Peter had even mentioned that there was no possible way that a priest such as Jethro would have any influence on Moses at all. That was pretty much added into the text. And if anybody wants to look it up, it's in Appendix C, the second homilies, chapter 52.
Yep.
But it's just interesting that y'all brought that up, and it just kind of popped in my head. I was like, well, according to Peter, that never happened.
Hey, that's an interesting thing. So just so people know what Todd's talking about, the Clementine recognitions, very interesting material. And he gave you that reference. Let me add one other thing, just because you reminded me, Todd. There is a passage in, I'm going back a few years now, so bear with me, but I'll look it up. I think it was in the Toldot Yeshu. The Toldot Yeshu is it may have even been, let me make a note here, I'll check this, the Hebrew Gospel, but only, not a Hebrew Gospel that we have, but a snippet from a Hebrew Gospel that is where the enemies of the Jewish Christians are making a point. And here it is. The point is, which is greater, Moses or Jethro? And according to this saying, it comes from Yeshua, from a source outside the canonical text. And of course, that raised some eyebrows. And he says it is Jethro, for Jethro advised Moses, right? So I always think about that. But like I said, it goes back a ways. I'll have to look and see if one of the patristic writers or someone referenced that supposed saying of Jesus of Nazareth. Now I've got me some homework. I've put a star and an asterisk by it. That means I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, we used to get pummeled by our ex-pastor about that. Every time we bring something like that up, he would just look at us and go, "Don't believe that stuff. It's not canonical."
That's right. It's outside the text.
Yeah, okay, whatever, dude.
That's right. That's right. Excellent. Hey, good stuff. Thanks, Todd and Angel. Hey, Betty, how are you? Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see you today.
Oh, Shabbat Shalom. Well, how am I? I'm very good. I have to tell you, we
Excellent.
had some water damage in our apartment earlier this week. It's been a horrific week, but Baruch Hashem, made it through, got everything cleaned up, and I'm learning patience and perseverance
Good deal.
one more time.
Excellent.
So anyway, you guys have brought up so much today. I'm looking at Miriam's comment, inquiring minds want to know,
Yeah.
and that certainly is the case. I don't have the answers. I guess one day we will know, and we will understand everything. But at this point, I think our responsibility is to be the best that we can be for ourselves, and to try to encourage others. And whatever happens to all of us collectively is up to our Creator. I don't know that we can ever predict. I think we just have to do our best. And we just finished the book of Leviticus, which is another book of the 5.
Yep.
And it's traditional in synagogues for everyone to stand together and to say this mantra, which is Chazak, Chazak, B'ni Chazak, which is translated different ways, but basically it's be strong, and let us be strengthened. Well, how are we strengthened? A lot of how we're strengthened is to go within ourselves and reach out and help and strengthen others.
Right.
I think we're living in a world together, and even though we're only responsible for ourselves to one degree, we're also responsible to other people if our actions are going to affect them. Just like your little story about the guy who was drilling a hole in a boat,
Yeah.
So that's really all I have. I don't have any answers. I just keep asking questions, and one day we'll know. And right now, it's okay with me that we don't.
Well, good. Just so I can, I kind of add to not just your comments, but a few other points. And not only can our bad decisions and bad actions affect other people around us, like Karen brought up some excellent examples, for how we can affect our children and so family members. And, we know now about secondary smoke. We know about all sorts of ways that negatively that people can affect someone around them. But we also have many examples where we can, through our actions and so forth, positively affect those around us. How many of us have had something really good or really nice or really wonderful happen to us, and we pass that on? I'm always, I really try, and I'm generally a happy person. I try to smile at people. I try to greet people I don't know, open the door for someone, shake someone's hand, help someone that might be, we were on a flight the other day. We spent time in Colorado, and you get on a plane, and this young girl who's just happened to look up, she's trying to get a bag into the overhead compartment. You know, and I'm looking around, all these big, strong guys are sitting around and nobody's going to help her. I mean, come on. You just help her. And this, you know, really turned into well, really, it opened up a conversation. And I was thinking, man, I don't know that I wanted to talk this much. But anyway, good brings good. And sometimes through good actions or bad actions, we can affect other people. So we're not an island. To your point, we're not an island. Everything, we're connected. There's an interconnectedness, a symbiosis, I think is the word, maybe.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we all came from the same creator, basically. We're children of Abraham. So we have a lot of things in common, and it's important, I think, for us to try to affect, just like you said, to affect others positively.
Yep.
I know James several years ago wrote a little thing called "Doing the Millennium Now."
Yeah.
And he mentioned those particular things, like smiling, opening the door for someone, just being kind.
Yeah.
I mean, why wait for the wolf to lie down with the lamb? Why don't we do what we can do now and just reach out and share and be the best that we can be?
Yeah.
Another rabbinical story is that, and I don't remember the guy's name, but he was wondering or thinking, why, I can't be as good as so and so, but actually when he got to the pearly gates or wherever he got to,
Yeah.
God said, well, why are you worrying about being like so and so? You need to worry about being you.
Yeah.
Like Betty, you need to worry about being the best Betty that you can.
That's right.
Don't be worried about being anybody else but you. You do your part, and everything will come. Well, will come after that. So
yeah. Like I tell myself, you do you. You do you. You let other people do them. And hopefully we give good advice along the way and set good examples. Good stuff.
And it is all about chesed, like Miriam wrote.
Yeah.
Acts of chesed, loving kindness, and it all comes to Micah 6:8, which is my favorite, and you quoted it again today. So.
Yeah. Hey, good stuff.
So thanks, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Hey, Sue.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom again.
Shabbat shalom.
I've been developing some ideas, and I'd really love to hear comments on them. First, I'm realizing, at least it seems to me, that the Hebrew scriptures are what you might call the handbook for a priestly nation. Its purpose is not to speak to Gentiles. Its purpose is to speak to the priestly nation of Israel and to instruct them as to how to live and how to worship Hashem. So I feel like we need to be careful about applying certain scriptures to individuals. And then keeping in mind that the Orthodox that I met anyway genuinely saw themselves as part of a whole. They don't think of themselves first. They think of how whatever action they're doing now is going to affect the community as a whole, the body as a whole. Excuse me. And I found that very inspiring, and I think it's in line with what Hashem means for us, that we are to live in such a way as to walk with him, and in that process be walking with one another, be in harmony with one another. But I really wanted to thank, I'm sorry I've forgotten whoever brought it up, but somebody brought up that, for example, when the angels came to deal with Sodom and Gomorrah, God did give a way out for those who had been obedient. And I think we see that on the individual level in many, many ways. In the Holocaust, 10 years before the Holocaust, the rabbis were warning people to leave Europe. And there's many, many other ways we can see that kind of where Hashem is reaching out to the individual so he doesn't have to deal with the communal punishment. So anyway, that's what I've been thinking, and I'd love to hear what other people think about that.
Thank you very much, Sue. Two real quick points. I agree that God gave Israel, the nation, the people, Am Israel, the people of Israel, this Torah, this instruction that they were to maintain. And it was something which, according to everything we know, was not, it was different than what other nations had. In fact, they had different gods. But I will say that the whole purpose, at least as I understand it, my takeaway is that God gave Israel, yes, here is some instruction. It's for you and for all those who are associated with you. Remember, out of Egypt came not only the children of Israel, as the story tells us, but a mixed multitude. There were probably Egyptians, there were, other Semitic people and so forth, Cushites and so forth. But whoever was there under that banner, I feel like I'm feeling like Eric here. He's got some good teachers that share this kind of message. But the idea is that they would do this as an example to those around them. For instance, Deuteronomy 4, verse 5, just as the Lord my God has charged me, I now teach you statutes and ordinances for you to do in the land that you are about to enter and occupy. You have to observe them diligently, for this will show your wisdom and discernment to the peoples who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, surely this great nation is wise and discerning, and so forth. And then they'll begin to follow the ways as well. The other example text that really jumps out, and then I want to get other people's opinions on this or listen to other people, not myself. Isaiah 56 is, let not the stranger say, Nachar, it's like a total foreigner, that he's a dry tree or he's separate from God's people. And how is that person brought in where you should not feel separate? By doing the covenant. And so particularly keeping the Sabbath and so forth. So I know that there are religious teachers who say, hey, listen here, Gentile, you're reading my mail. Put that back in the mailbox. That's not for you. Where I would say, stop being ugly, set an example, and the people who seek to emulate those examples should be welcomed with open arms. So, good stuff. All right. Look, I got a lot of hands raised. All right, Karen, welcome back.
I just want to remind everyone, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but we got to remember that in the text, in Deuteronomy, there's always that listen and do. There's a flood coming. God speaks to Noah. He listens, he does. So even if, a whole country or something is marked for destruction, or the entire world, there still are those righteous who who can listen and do. And rise above the situation, get out of where they're at, lech lecha, however you want to put it.
Yep.
So, when you see your leaders throwing everything into chaos and making terrible decisions,
build a boat. You're saying build a boat.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean actually build a boat, but, rethink everything. Go back and make sure you're doing what's right. Because, I was in a different situation at one point where I thought I was doing everything that was right.
Yeah.
And come to find out, I wasn't.
Yep.
So,
I've been there, done that. I still do it.
But yeah, it's not always doom and gloom.
Good point.
You do have that opportunity to listen and do.
Amen.
That's all I was gonna say.
Hey, thanks, Karen. Claudie, welcome back.
Hi again.
Hello.
So I just wanted to re-center the thing and to remember that it's a good thing that restudying Leviticus and Deuteronomy has made me understand better the Moses Scroll.
Yep.
Because it points exactly at that and how the Israel nation understood the Torah.
Mm.
And also I wanted to point that this is a very good, the blessings and the curses are very good for understanding that the good and the bad are on God's hand. And he doesn't do these things to punish us, but he does this because he wants us to be better. This is something like in modern psychology, people call this the denial. When you deny having doing something not good for yourself, when you deny a reality, when you deny something that you make wrong repeatedly, it always comes back at you more dynamically, until you understand that you have to understand to change your way.
Yeah.
And to finish, I just wanted to, I love how Yehovah makes us wants to make us understand that everything is for good, and that there is not a bad God. Satan is not a bad God.
Yeah.
Everything is on our hands, and we have to choose good and life.
Good points. And I love Deuteronomy's repeated use of that it may go well with you, right? So that's it's a beautiful phrase. Carolyn. Yes, Carolyn.
Hello again.
Hey.
Just a comment to respond to Sue, that it was for Israel. Yes, the Old Testament, the Tanakh, I don't know the right word for it, whatever, the original Hebrew was for the nation of Israel. However, it was so that they could be a light to the nations. And in Zechariah 14:16, it says, then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem at the battle at the end shall go up year by year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Booths. So I'm a Christian. I believe that just like you, Ross, you follow Christ out of Christianity. I've done that too. But when he died and the veil in the temple was rent from top to bottom, I see that symbolically, whether it's true or not, as opening the door to everyone, that anyone who wants to come to God now can. And if they respond, if they listen to his voice, something on their heart opens up, they realize that they need to do something. If they get up and go like Abraham, God will work with them individually.
You know what I love about this discussion is that people from all different walks, different places can come together and discuss some of the deeper thinking elements of faith. And, to me, that's beautiful because I've told people whatever I classify myself, which I'm not sure anymore, I just quit giving it a name because I don't know. Wherever I'm at, I want to be around people who are asking the same questions, who have the same concerns, who are searching for the truth about God. And the fact that we don't all have to agree or be theologically on the same page is a beautiful thing. Thank you for that, Carolyn. Hey, Sue, welcome back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, you're just okay.
I did just want to say that I agree completely that the whole purpose of the priestly nation was to bring the rest of the world to walk with Hashem as well. But that's why I love the Moses scroll, because I think the basis for the rest of the world are those 10 commands.
Got it. And I knew what you meant because I've had enough correspondence with you. So thanks for that clarification, Sue. And I'm about to bring Patty up all the way from Jerusalem with her grin and smile. Hey, Patty, how are you? Look, you didn't get up last night, but Dave brought the camera. Dave brought the camera in there where you were sleeping and showed us what you looked like. No, I'm joking. He didn't do that.
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, I just want to say that we've walked up and down all the streets of Jerusalem. We've talked to everybody we know. We've been doing this for years. And I'm telling you, I could not wait to get back to the hotel so I could log into Ross's class. And I'm just telling you that you're not going to find a better teaching on the Torah than here. And I just think, I just want to tell Ross and everyone here that. And I think that this is an amazing group and we've all come to the right place. And that's all I want to say.
Hey,
Lila Tov.
Patty, that is so sweet. I thank you, and I am glad. I tell you what, you guys kind of hit me out of the blue. I just assumed that 3 a.m. was not going to work for Erev Shabbat, so I put out the newsletter Thursday and just left it out. I knew that you would do something from Israel and you would greet the people, which is something you always do. But yesterday, I'll tell you, I was driving, running a couple of errands, and I got a note from Patty in Israel, and she's like, "Hey, what's up? We got the newsletter, and it looks like you cut us out of the," she didn't say this, but, and I said, "My God, you're really going to do this at 3 a.m.?" And Dave said, "Why not?" Yeah, so Seth and I scrambled, and but it was nice, and it was a good report, and I'm so thankful that you kept us in the loop because you're having fun. You're having Shabbat with Simcha Yakubovich, and
Yes.
all the cool stuff, and the rest of us are depending on good reports from Israel. So thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Okay, hoping to be there this next Shabbat from Tamar. And thank you again, Ross and everyone. And Lila Tov, we're going to sign off here.
Hey, tell David Conley and the new supervisor that's there and the kitty and any other animals that are there, I said Shabbat Shalom when you see them. Y'all keep us in the loop when you're going there. I want to keep up
I
with you.
will. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Hey, thanks, Patty. Yes, Betty, how are you? Shabbat Shalom again. Did you mean to have your hand up or is it still up?
Oh, no, I did. I just wanted to say, now that Patty and Dave are on, oops, they're off. Okay, I just wanted to say Shabbat Shalom to them, but I also wanted to just tell you one more thing about Jewish tradition that is very moving for me is that in the synagogues, when we read the blessings and the curses are read almost in a whisper. And it just goes right through you because it's like we have to whisper them because they're so bad, but yet we have to say them because we need to admonish ourselves.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a very moving thing. That's all.
Very good. Good point.
Thank you.
And Charles Sutton, East Alabama. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing good, Ross. Am I coming through?
You're coming through perfectly fine.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, I want to tell you a little story. This guy was needing a new mule for his farm, so he went to the market and he's gonna buy a mule. He's willing to pay about $20, but this guy says, "I'll sell this one for $5." He said, "Why so cheap?" He said, "Well, you don't look so good." So the guy bought it for $5. He went back and then he come back the next time they had a market and he was kind of ticked off at the guy. He says, "Well, you sold me a blind mule." He said, "Well, I told you ahead of time he don't look so good."
Hey, I tell
So
you what, you get what you pay for, don't you?
That's true. That's true. So, in words mean different things. Could you take either listen? I like listen, but maybe walk or one of those other 4-step processes and just kind of explain that word as a difference between blind and don't look so good?
That's an excellent question, and I would say it like this. In fact, I saw Miriam Cormier kind of hit this in the chat during the class that I taught, and it just goes to show that Miriam's been doing this a while and she's been studying these words out. And here's the deal. In Hebrew, Shema is, I mentioned in the class that it's more than 80 times in Deuteronomy alone. And really, I like the Old English hearken because hearken is an active listening. You know, in this, people that are married or people that have a relationship, anyone who deals with other people, you know that sometimes we people in general, husbands usually, are criticized because we don't listen. But the definition of listen is kind of like your mule, don't look so good. Don't listen so good is the way it is. You know, it's like sometimes if my wife Bridget tells me to do something or asks me to do something, if I don't do it right then, she thinks I didn't hear her. No, I heard her, I just didn't jump up and do it. I think biblically there is an association there. I think sometimes God wants you to start driving nails in the boat when he tells you to build a boat. And sometimes we all act like the husband who don't hear so good, and we're going to build the boat, but we'll get to it, when we get to it. So just a quick, the four-step process in Deuteronomy, and really only Deuteronomy, is Shema. Listen or hearken, actively listen, learn, guard, and do. And the first part of that is, as you listen, to begin actively listening, which leads you into learn. What does it mean? I hear something. As I read the text, I see it, I hear it. What does that mean? And you begin to interpret it. So hopefully that helps. But if it doesn't, you know my number. Todd and Angel, yes, how are you again?
I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier in your class.
Okay.
About chapter 27 in Leviticus. That's kind of interesting. I was mentioning to her last week. I was like, it's almost like that was just added on at the end of it, because it does stop, and it kind of reminds me of chapter 21 in John, because in chapter 20 it's over. All of a sudden 21 just pops up. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it was kind of interesting how sometimes that's done in the text, as if they're trying to either take a writing they found and maybe add it to that book, or whatever it is they're doing. And something else I was thinking of too, and I mentioned this to you last week about all the different priestly stuff.
Yeah.
And especially even in chapter 27, there's a lot of things you got to read it over and over and over again to even halfway understand what they're talking about in chapter 27. And it just reminded me of the end of Matthew 11, when he says that my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of makes you wonder, with everything that's in chapter 27 that makes you go cross-eyed trying to understand what's going on with that doesn't sound easy and it doesn't sound light.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you question that a little bit. It's because when you're going over the blessings and the curses, that's easy to understand.
Yeah.
For most people, it's not easy to do.
Right.
It's easy to understand.
Yeah.
And so that to me is an easy yoke and a light burden. But when you start getting all these other commands and everything else that doesn't make sense, and it seems to be very involved, why does it need to be? That's when I start questioning things myself.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, and Nadine, I see your hand raised. 1 second. What I see when I look at, say, the end of Leviticus 26, it says, verse 46, these are the statutes and ordinances and laws that the Lord established between himself and the people of Israel on Mount Sinai through Moses. You go, man, that'd be a great place to end that chapter of the book, right? This is everything that God, and then you go, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Here's another chapter. And then you work through all these various laws, like stuff that got left out, kind of a PS, and some people are like, well, that's exactly what it is, Ross. What's the big deal? Well, look at the end of Leviticus. These are the commandments that the Lord gave to Moses for the people of Israel on Mount Sinai. Then you go to the book of Numbers, same kind of stuff, and it ends, chapter 36 of Numbers, verse 13. These are the commandments and the ordinances that the Lord commanded through Moses to the Israelites in the plain of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. By the way, Numbers ends, Moses has already been told you're not going to go into the promised land. Here's all the commandments, give these to the people of Israel. He's already at Mount Nebo. He's already climbed up. And then you have a whole nother book So what's going on here? We're recognizing not just me or not some liberal scholar, but people who read carefully are noticing that we have sources that are put together to produce this book that we love and we seek to live our lives by. Good,
Well,
good point.
That's a good point too. And something that I think is interesting is, like I was saying last week about how I was just for fun, I was redacting parts of Leviticus, trying to figure out what the truth is, what's really going on. Like I said, the first 17 chapters are all about sacrifices. So that's out as far as what I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And it seems to me Leviticus is only probably five chapters long, 6 chapters long. I mean, because if you really look into it, of what is not Yahovah's character, I mean, 21 doesn't even pass the test to me, because it's all about sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it interesting because, like you said a little while ago, we're here to learn truth. We're here to figure out what is real and what is man-made.
And we have to ask some hard questions to do that. And this is a safe place, let's call it a safe place, to work some of these things out. No question is off the table. I have thick skin, and it's mainly because, of finding so many places where I've been incorrect in my journey up to this point, and I'm always open to correcting still, because I think that's the only way we get to the bottom of some of the great religious questions of our time.
Yeah, especially it's one very important thing that needs to happen. When you're walking this and everything, you got to be willing to let go of what you grew up knowing.
It sounds like Abraham. Sounds like you're telling us what God told Abraham. Leave everything you're familiar. Leave your father's house. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Todd. Hey, Nadine. Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see your smile. How are you?
Shabbat Shalom. I'm good. How are you, Ross?
Good, good.
I wanted to comment on the question of who we are, our identity.
Okay.
When people, you do Shabbat. And so I've been starting to say that I'm a student of the Bible. And I quite like that phrase, and it represents a lot of us me as a researcher, which anyways is my profession. I'm a scientist.
Right.
And I'm researching, during the week, and then I research on Shabbat on my other passion. So, and what I found is that when I say that, it also gives a platform for other people to ask questions.
Right.
And had some really great conversations that have started on, who are you? What do you do? So that was just a comment, but I have a question on the Parsha. Another topic in Bechukotai is the concept of redemption. And I wanted to ask about that because it's a concept that I guess I haven't fully understood yet. And in Leviticus, I see that redemption is really based on land. Like it's the year of the Jubilee, and then the land can go back to who it was before. And I know that in the New Testament, redemption has also this non-land concept. And I wanted to ask kind of what your thoughts were on the concept of redemption. And are there other places in the Torah or the Tanakh where redemption does mean something other than land? And I just wanted to kind of, ask you and the group about some of these questions.
Okay. Wow. That is first of all, that's a big question. But before I jump into that, I will say this. I like what you said about calling yourself a researcher because it's what you are. So, it's funny when people say, hey, Ross, what do we call you? I have people that write me and they'll say rabbi or whatever. I don't use titles. But when I made business cards, through an online cheap service, I just wanted something simple. So my name is in Paleo Hebrew, and under it, it says author, explorer, researcher, teacher. I had 4 words. That's what I do. And really, the thing I love is research, because we're never going to solve great problems, whether we're talking religion or science or anything, if we don't analyze, if we don't take in all the data that we can bring in. Like a fool would base their conclusions, or maybe that's harsh. Someone who's uninformed would base all of their conclusions without data. But what we want to do is we want to research. So I think that everyone I'm talking to now, even if we do a different job during the week, you're all researchers. That's, you know, and you said you like to call yourself a student of the Bible. You know, I know that Scott Stripling and those guys have associates for scripture knowledge or something, I think, or maybe that's someone else I used to work with. Anyway, that's what we do. We're researchers, and I can really appreciate that. I've got the redemption piece on my pad. I'm going to let Joshua go, and then we'll come back to that for a few minutes if that's okay. All right. Hey, good to see you. Hey, Josh, how are you? Man, what's going on with the background? You've got like it's the end of the world. I started to sing, "It's the end of the world as we know it." You got sun flares going on in the background. What is
I'm just
that?
feeling very solar flare theme right now. You know, I had that cool dark nighttime planet thing going on last week.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, kind of got some solar vibes going on.
All
kinda
right.
like
What?
hot and serious.
Well, in that theme, then, give us some light. Share some of the light of your knowledge with us. Then,
I just want to reiterate what you said. I really love what Nadine shared about being a student of the Bible, and then, you know, that's where I found myself as an adult, and I also wanted to comment on what Todd had said, that as I go through the books and we go through the parashas over and over again, we start to see these things through a different and a renewed perspective, and maybe some things don't belong. But what I wanted to say really is that I'm grateful that we have all the text, even if some of it
yeah,
doesn't fit the way that we thought that it should have when we were younger, or the way that our parents or our grandparents told us it should be. I'm glad that we have all of it, so that we have all this evidence we can look at and start to put together this great puzzle.
excellent. I'm with you, man. I tell you, I love ancient literature. I mean, I spent the week in Colorado with my family, and in the spare moments, and there were some, but they were late at night when the rest of the family passed out, went to bed. You know, I'm studying ancient text from the Baal cycle of literature. I carry with me now, one of the Bibles I carry every day has the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, has the New Testament, has the Apocrypha, and a lot of academic notes. You know, this is, to me, it doesn't mean, like if you say, well, what's your faith? Well, that's this other Bible I carry. It's the Tanakh in Hebrew, and it's an academic version. It's the BHS. And then within that, I have questions, I have comments. But you're right, though. I mean, like, I won't name names, but I was working in Israel where Dave and Patty are going to go. We were at a library at Biblical Tamar, and there were certain books on the shelf that didn't align with our current theology. And this other person said, maybe we could put these in another room. And I said, no, because people are coming to this world, to this land, to this biblical text that they grew up with, and it's in some way it ministers to people. So we have people in this group listening to me right now who are Christian. We have people who have denounced Christianity. We have people who are Jewish. We have people who don't care for Judaism per se. But we come together, and what do we come together around? We come together around an ancient book, a collection of stories, and we seek to understand so that we can learn to live these things. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Amen.
Man,
Shalom, y'all.
hey, look, I like that theme right behind you. Keep the fire burning, Joshua. You're doing things right. Tom, how are you, Tom? I see your hand raised.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good Nadine brought up something that made me put up my hand about the land, because as I read this chapter 26 here, I see a concern for the land.
Yeah.
Jehovah's showing his concern for the land, because, and it's, the idea of walking with the Elohim, being back in the garden, you even touched on that a little bit in your message. He's treating the land like the Garden of Eden in a sense, and how if you do, and if you do these things, if you follow my instructions, the land will produce for you, and it'll be like the garden, right? But if you don't, I'm going to squeeze you. Yeah. And then if you don't, I'll squeeze you some more, and if you don't, and that's kind of merciful, really, and then if you still don't, then I'm going to squeeze you, and the land's going to vomit you out.
Yeah.
It's going to vomit you out. But even then, there's still going to be a remnant left. The people who there's always going to be a faithful group, right? At least that's the way I read it. And even then, when it vomits them out in the when as it says, in spite of this, when they're in the land of the enemies, I'm not going to reject them, to finish them, because he wants to bring us back, right? At least that's how I read it. But it's interesting because, and the reason I think it's about the land, because it starts out right at the beginning, don't make any forbidden idols for yourselves, nor set up any. He doesn't want that stuff on his land. You're going to keep my Sabbaths, and that includes the land Sabbaths. Because then it makes the point at the end, right? So during that time that you're out of the land's going to be able to keep its Sabbaths now that I've kicked you off it, now that it's squeezed you out. So I do see what I see is Yehovah being very protective of his land, and we're tenants.
Hey, let me
Anyway.
use your good description and springboard off of it, and then I'm gonna hand it to the Tylers in Israel again. You ended with what I just wrote down, and what I just wrote down. And it goes to Nadine's comment, and I want to come back to that after Dave, but Leviticus 25 is one of the very important chapters when we deal with redemption, which I'll get into in a minute. As she brought up, that we know about the redemption of the land, but is there a deeper concept of redemption? There is. But I will say, with what you just ended, Leviticus 25:23 says, "The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine. With me you are but aliens and tenants," which is exactly what you just said. Now, what I'll plant the seed for, and then I'll come back to in a moment, is the idea that redemption at its core has to do with an unveiling, a restoration, but it's really tied to revelation. So, for instance, all these rules about the land and redeeming the land and so forth, the first thing we have to know is, who does that land belong to? We can say, well, this land belongs to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you go, well, yeah, but why is that? Because they're sort of commissioned to keep that land and so forth. But I want to go into that a little bit more in just a moment. But I just wanted to agree with you, Tom, that ultimately it's funny that Leviticus 25 doesn't begin, but rather late into the chapter we get this idea, just to make sure no one's missing it, that the land belongs to God. You're just a tenant here. You have a landlord. Don't forget it. So we'll come back to that. Dave and Patty, all the way from
Hey,
Jerusalem.
everyone.
It's Patty
still
again.
It's still Patty here. I just wanted to say, and I raised my hand before Thomas made his point, and I think one of the reasons that Israel was exiled from the land was so that the land could celebrate its Sabbaths, because it's good for the soil. And I know that in like we've practiced crop rotation and all of that, but the land was supposed to lie fallow for a year before you could plant again. And I just think that was a really important thing. And that's all I wanted to say.
Hey, good
Bye.
good point. Yeah, there is in the text, I think, this underlying awareness of things that modern horticulturists only know, in more recent times. But that's a good point. Let it rest. There's even this idea that when you plant and your tree, let's say you plant a fruit tree and it begins to yield fruit, and you go, oh, I can go eat my grapes now or my apples or whatever. Well, there is a process that you go through. You allow it a certain number of years before you can actually consume it. And there's a reason for that. Let me just say this. Bridget, my wife, is an excellent farmer. She's learned this on her own. And she was making a certain kind of pickle out of her cucumbers. And so, and I don't know any of this. I just learned from listening and watching what she's doing. And she said, I have to not pick these cucumbers because I want them to reach a certain size and go to seed. I mean, she's going through all this. I'm telling you, when we dated in high school, we never talked about stuff like this. I promise you. But now I'm amazed at what she knows. And she said, because if I pick them too early, the plants, not the plant, the plants will then know not to get to a certain size or whatever. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I was impressed. I probably didn't do justice to what she was telling me. But there is this idea that there are principles involved that we may or may not be onto. I'm going to stop showing my ignorance of farming. Josh.
So this question about redemption, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really important because you have this idea from the Tanakh of this kind of grounded in practicality and in a redeeming of the land for the benefit of God's chosen people. And then, of course, in the future, the Christian texts have their own ideas about redemption, and they're very theological and very deep. I will say, I believed it most of my life. The question about where else in the Tanakh we find the specific phrases for redemption as it relates to something else besides land, I think that's going to make an excellent Bible study. I look forward to seeing our results. I'm not a great researcher, but I know I can rely on Ross to give us the answers next week. But the one thought that I had that I thought I would share is that I remember something from Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones. And there does seem to be a message of redemption for the dry bones being prophesied over and the flesh to come back on them and the breath to come back into them, and the people who have already died to come back to life and for them to be redeemed. And just like the land belongs to God, we also belong to God, and he will redeem us. Maybe he'll redeem us physically at some point in the future. But I also consider this to be a bridge between all faiths, because all faiths are concerned either with an afterlife or what we're supposed to be doing right now here on earth while we're still alive. And this bridge of redemption, if we can find some way to communicate and find some similarities and some common ground with this idea of redemption, I think that would go a long way.
Hey, let me tell you, I'm gonna now jump into a bit of that if everybody's got a few more minutes. I do, by the way, have a dance recital. I'm personally not dancing, but my granddaughters, Ainsley and Natalie, are doing a dance recital, and they're so thrilled when I'm in country and I can be at these things. So, but I want to say this about redemption. There is a class years ago. I don't even know if it's available anymore. I'm talking years ago. James Tabor taught a class on the Redeemer. And I remember him saying at the time, and I have since studied and taught this, so I want to plant this seed. The Redeemer, he learned it, and I learned it also, not really from James, but from David Horowitz. And David Horowitz and Moses Gabori did a lot on what is called in Hebrew the Goel. Goel. You researchers out there, write this down, look it up, do the dig on like JewishEncyclopedia.com, look in all of the sources you have, Goel. And I remember David Horowitz's point is that everyone, not everyone, Jews and Christians, most religious people of the book, look for the coming of the Messiah. And this is the way it was presented to me. So bear with me. I'm conveying what I learned. The Messiah would answer to the Redeemer. They're not the same. The Messiah is a minimal point in the Hebrew Bible. Take the New Testament, put it on the shelf, please, even if you're a Christian, because if you're a Christian, you should say, well, the New Testament's supposedly based on the Hebrew Bible. If you look at, or you search for, look for the Messiah in the Hebrew Bible, you will not find him. Making the point more clearly, people say, yes, he's in Isaiah 53. Nowhere in Isaiah 53 does it mention Messiah. So get the point. I mean, like by using the term. So, but what is the Redeemer? Let me give you an example, and it kind of ties back to something Josh said. In Job, I saw people talking about Job earlier in the context. Job is strange book. It's fascinating at the same time. In Job 19:25, chapter 19, verse 25, Va'ani yadati go'ali chai, and I know my Redeemer lives. I'm doing this very literally, so stick with me. And Job says, I know that my Redeemer lives. And then there's a pause. And he says, V'acharon al afar yachum. And a last one, being literal, upon dust he will arise. Job is saying that he knows that his Redeemer, his Goel, in Hebrew, Goali, means my Redeemer. I know that my Redeemer lives. And then he says something very weird. A last one, upon the dust, he will stand up. He will raise up, basically. And then it says, and after my flesh, you're probably saying, that's not what my translation says. And after my flesh is off, from my flesh I will see Eloah. This is a weird verse. We're not going to get into the fullness of it today, but I want you to understand, Job is saying, Job 19:25 is saying that he's describing a time after he's, to be crude, turned to ashes and dust. And he is going to come back and see God. Now, who is the Redeemer? I know some of you are saying, wait a minute, I have questions. Let me look at something here. The Redeemer is found in, let me see. The word Goel is the word you have to study to understand the Redeemer and redemption. And we're going to talk about that. But the root word, Redeemer, Goel, Gimel, Aleph, Lamed, occurs 103 times in the Hebrew Bible. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Now let me read you Job 19:25 in a regular English translation and see what the translators do with it. You ready? Job 19:25. That's pretty close, actually, in the NRSV. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at last he will stand upon the earth, and after my skin has been destroyed, then in my flesh I shall see God. Now, what in the world is the Redeemer that we're describing? And I'll
No, the
just
ASV says, "Without my flesh, I will see God."
the ASV. Yeah, I'm reading
sir.
from the NRSV.
Okay.
Yeah. So who is the Redeemer? And the root word Gaal, which is Goali, is my Redeemer, but the root word is to let me think how to put it, to reveal. So for instance, if I say in Hebrew, Psalm 119:18 is this wonderful verse that says, Gal enai va'avita niflaot mitorateka. Reveal, or like you're asking God to peel open my eyes, to reveal to me, and then I'm going to look for wonderful things in your Torah. So Gaal, the redemption, is in Hebrew called the it's tied to the same root. It's called the Gula. You hear the G and the L sound. So I'm getting, I know this is not making total sense yet, but the idea of redemption has to do with a revelation, if you will, an unveiling of God's plan in a way. And the one who is capable of doing that is God. He is ultimately the one to whom the redemption belongs, both in the actions which bring about the redemption and in the hidden things that lead up to it. So just as an example, let me see if I can open up a couple of these translations.
Ross, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So just so I understand, are we saying that Elohim is responsible for the actions of the redemption process, but he's also the receiver of the ultimate redemption product?
Both. Yes. Yes, both. That's
Thank you.
right. Yep. Let me find, I've got so many translations on open. Let's see. Okay, so for instance, in Genesis 48:16, this is really some cool stuff. You want to talk about the Redeemer? I bet Seth is going to say, hey, we need to do a video on this. But here's an example. Genesis 48:16, the angel, or the Malak, Hagoel, who has redeemed me from all bad, blessed the boys, and he called on them my name and the name of my father Abraham and Isaac, and let them, literally, this is weird too, let them proliferate like fish, or basically they're going to become fish for a multitude in the midst of the earth. So God, Israel is saying about Ephraim and Manasseh, this is the first occurrence of the Redeemer, or the one who redeems, and he attributes the act of redemption to the Malak. Who is the Malak? The messenger of the Lord, right? See how this stuff is cool? Okay. Exodus chapter 6, verse 6. Say therefore to the children of Israel, Ani Yehovah, and I am Jehovah, and I brought you, plural, from the burdens of Egypt, or the Egyptians, and I delivered you from slavery to them. And I will redeem, I will be a redeemer, v'ga'alti etchem, and I will be your redeemer, plural, with an outstretched arm and mighty acts of judgment. So tying back to my first comment, the Messiah reports to or answers to the Redeemer, meaning here, if I did it like this, Redeemer, Messiah. You know, if there even is a Messiah, I know that raised some eyebrows in the text, but you're really waiting for a Redeemer. The Redeemer is Jehovah and or his messenger, is the point. Now, again, whatever, even if you think of redemption as bringing out. The children of Israel, it's like they're hidden in the land of Egypt, and to redeem them, he makes them visible. He makes them, he reveals them and the plan that he has for them. Yes, Joshua.
Sorry, quick
Yeah.
question. Well, Nadine brought this up in chat, and I think it's a great point. When we're talking about redemption in this context, are we talking about redeeming the people, or are we talking about God redeeming the land on their behalf? Is that right, Nadine? Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
both. Yes, both. So a couple of these verses already, the redemption is the people. Ultimately, part of that redemptive process involves a land. Like you can't read not only the Pentateuch, but the rest of the Hebrew Bible. It's like you have God, land, people.
Sure.
God, land, people. It's a three-legged stool. You can't take
Sure.
one of them out. So in the past, other forms of religion claiming to be associated with the text made some major mistakes. So they made a person who could be involved in God's process, depending on your religious tradition. They made that person into the God, which is one of the supports for the system. They took the land. They took the land, yes, exactly. That is a literal place, and they said, "Oh, Ross, it's not talking about the land of Israel, like that old desert dry place. It's talking about walking streets of gold in heaven, and strumming a harp with a bunch of other angelic people."
Well, and you
which
can
always
imagine why
sound
they
boring.
did that, because if you've got millions, literally millions and millions of Gentiles out there who want to believe, who want to be a part of this special plan, and they're told, but you can't be connected to the land.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not going to be real popular.
Yeah, that's right. So if you have a specific God, a specific redeemer, and you say, I'm gonna make someone else that God, and you go, well, wait a minute, hold on, and you go, well, wait a minute, we've got two other legs to this stool. If you can be okay with the way I'm describing God, the land, and the people. And then you say, well, the land doesn't really mean the land. You go, well, what about the people? At least, is that right? And you go, no, even the people are wrong. So you have a different God, a different land, which isn't even terra. It's not even terra firma. It's not that. It's a celestial land, Beulah land, the streets of gold, and the by and by, and whatever. And then you go, and the people aren't right either. You go, no, everybody is really, it's a spiritual Israel. So I think that the redemption is based on these three primary pieces. Who is the Redeemer? Who is the redeemed? And where is the place of redemption? All three of those go together. So you have, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. The redemption is yes, land, yes, people, yes, redeemer. And that is everything that I understand redemption to be associated with. And isn't it interesting that all three of those primary foundational points have been reinterpreted to take away, to veil the eyes of someone who's looking at the redemption? I think it's just, it's tragic.
I think it's very clever. It is tragic. It's very clever the way it's been done, and it's been copied successfully over and over again in different flavors. The only other observation I would make to that is, why didn't some of these Gentile priests, even if they halfway believed the Hebrew prophets, the Hebrew perspective on who God is and what redemption is, why didn't any of them stop and say, I wonder if we can ask Jehovah to help us redeem our land over here for our people? You know what I mean?
I want to make sure I follow. Why didn't somebody say, like, how can I get in on this?
Let me give you a literal example.
Okay. All right.
I just think it's a tragedy that somebody, say, like the bishop in Rome, if he wanted to believe this, if he took a look at these texts and he took a look at the history and said, I think I believe this stuff. I think Jehovah is the one true God. He is the creator. Why didn't one of those bishops stop and say, Jehovah, can you redeem our land over here for the Romans and kind of do something similar with us that you're doing over there with your special chosen people?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to steal and bastardize their entire religion.
It's a good question. It is. I mean, why didn't anyone? Well, first of all, the question is, did they see it? And I think that the history of replacement theology, if you understand replacement theology, is not just a little thing. Replacement theology is the substitution of all sorts of important truths with something which is not important and not true. So first of all, the religious teachers, and that's pick up the Bible. This is the newspaper of the ancient world. What you see is, it's like I described this. Have you ever watched a movie and you're watching the movie, you know that the cops are bad and somebody is being pursued and they're like, oh, just call the police. And the detective says, yeah, I'm coming. And you're sitting there, you're eating your popcorn and saying, no, this guy's bad. The priests are in on it. The religious teachers are the problem. It's like when we read the biblical text, the priests are dirty.
Yeah.
The religious teachers have fed you lies. And I
As
think
evidenced by the fact that they're all trying to kill the prophets. They're all in on it. They all hate the prophets. They hate the message. They hate everything about it. And it's not just them, it's the priests for all the other religions all around the world. It kills me. We've got so many generations, so much water under the bridge that none of these priests have woken up and realized, something's not right.
Well, I think in some ways, thank God, there are people who are waking up. I want to think that we're waking up, this group, for instance, as a good example of people who say, I want to give a careful look at this. I want to research this and see if I can't get to the bottom of some of these more problematic things. So,
thank you, Ross.
Yeah, look at though. And I do have Redeemer and Redemption written down. I might look at that more this week, just to think about what do we do from here. But the idea of redemption is a really big deal, and I'm glad Nadine brought it up. Think about that word goel and the redemption, gula, Geula, if you're looking that up in your research, everybody. And then let's do this. On the Discord channel in Horeb, we have a dialogue. Maybe someone can start a study thread on redemption. And rather than me look at everything, what are some of your ideas? What are some of your insights? And start putting articles or commentary and so forth in that, because then it becomes a teamwork thing and we're going to figure out a lot more. I think that's a good thing, because like we said, what are the ideas of redemption of land, and let's see what we can find. I think that would be a wonderful exercise. Who are the redeemed? Who's the Redeemer? And where is the place of redemption? And what are the things that I didn't even mention that are prevalent in the text? Brother Ronnie Fulcher. Man, it's good to see that picture. Look at that.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure why my video's not working, but
there it is. There it is.
Good deal. Now, I think one of the things we all run into, at least I did, is we have so much baggage from the past. I mean, a lot of these lies are perpetuated when we're children, and it's hard to get away from it.
Yeah.
Until you start looking at what is exact truth, and that's such a revelation to people. But most people don't want exact truth. They're happy to live where they are because it takes effort to change.
Yeah.
One, and it's scary as all get out.
Yeah.
Because just like Nadine said something about, she's a researcher. Well, I do a lot of that also.
Yeah.
And we run into these issues, like we uncover this stuff. We're going like, oh my God, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to get this out to people that, one, they're going to listen to it?
Yeah.
And two, are they going to accept it? and that's why I started posing questions like, it's got to be a difference between the Redeemer per se and the Messiah.
Yeah.
To me, a Messiah needs certain criteria. And y'all please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm like some of the other ones here. I'm a student of the word.
Yeah.
I am strictly, that's what I want to know. But you know yourself, I pose a lot of questions because one, I want answers. Two, I like to start a dialogue with people that want to discuss issues.
Yep.
I don't want to argue. I want to discuss them because if they've got something I can use, I want to grow with it, Ross.
Yeah, me too.
But anyway, I think this is a great group, and we'll keep learning and getting better and better. And I think we can pass on the truth, and it'll make it easier for other ones that comes after us, and they can get further along.
Yeah, I agree, and I love what you do on your social media. I think it's great. It encourages, and this is what we're trying to do here, is encourage dialogue. Look, none of us have all the answers. I certainly don't. None of us have all the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I certainly don't. And none of us should claim to be the end all of religious truth. But together, I think that we are in a much better position to come up with reasonable ideas and things that have helped us. Jeremiah talks about, according to the text, God tells Jeremiah to set up road posts or road signs or guideposts, as it might be translated. And this, in a way, is what we're trying to do. Even when we say, hey, post that in the Discord, because it allows people to join in and discuss it. And you'll notice I may not be the best example of this, but I'm trying to facilitate a discussion. That's really what this is about. Seth and I talk about this all the time. How do we get people to talk? Because it's, if you look at the passage in Malachi, it says, then when people talk together, I'm paraphrasing, there was this book of remembrance that was written before God. It's those who think about God's name. I want to bring people together from all different walks of life. And I don't want anyone to feel, when I say a safe place, I mean that. I don't want somebody to think, well, I can't be welcome there because I'm an Orthodox Jew, or I'm a Presbyterian, or I'm a Pentecostal, or Look, none of that matters as long as we're coming together with authentic, open inquiry where we're asking questions for the purpose of finding where the data points us. I think that's the only way we can go forward. And yep. Yeah, no, go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, something I'm working on, and I told Lee this the other day. You probably remember this, but I'm working on an article now about truth within truth.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, at one point we thought we all had exact truth, but then we started uncovering the truth within our truth.
Yeah.
We started changing, and it modified our lives. And that's what I'm trying to do. For my life, is to find out what, like somebody mentioned, I think it's Betty or something, mentioned something earlier about, I want to change and modify my life and the way I live that is pleasing to the Creator.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah. Well, amen.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Okay. It is almost 2:00 my time, and I have an appointment with 2 dancing girls, and I look forward to seeing all of you this week. I will put something out very soon. We're in between working on the other building and so forth. I told all of you, the members of the YACOD, we are going to kick off again, hopefully as early as Monday. I'll send something out. But I want to work through this book, The Biblical Hebrew by Kelly. And if it's not too late, if you want to join in, but we'll post those discussions. There are a lot of ways you can do this, but I want to work through chapter by chapter, because I remember when I was first learning, the difficult thing was I really didn't have anybody to call. I wasn't a student at a university. I was in a land of the Gentile giants. There was no one around me that knew anything or cared anything about Hebrew. So I just want to be there. I want to work through these chapter by chapter where the work is on you, but I can help, and we can make suitable progress in the language. So, but I'll put something out. I think we're going to kick off the first and third Monday of every month. I hope I can be ready to do that the first Monday, which is next Monday, coming right around the corner, of June. Worst case scenario, it'll be the third Monday. So please don't give up on me on that. We are a small team, and we're working as hard as we can, but I'm having to do like sheetrock mud and painting and all that stuff as well. So bear with me. We'll be doing that. And Scott is in the room with me now. Scott, you raise your hand again. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. There's those Scott. Scott is moving to Florida. So it's going to look the same to me because I'll see his face on the screen just like I do now. But Scott's been a great help and supporter of what we're doing here. And he is entered the world of retirement, whatever that means. And so we wish him blessings in his new adventure in Florida. And we'll be seeing him on the screen, but he won't be here unless he comes to visit me all the way from Florida. So again, write this down as a tentative the weekend of September the 1st. It happens to be my birthday. I'll be 37. And look, some of you are laughing like you don't believe that. No, I think I'll be like 58. But anyway, September the 1st, that weekend happens to be Labor Day weekend. And I hope to be in the new building and have an open house that weekend. So we'll more on that to come as well. How about this? Until I see you again, Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. God bless you. May his face shine upon you, and may he be gracious unto you. Have a blessed week. We'll see you next time.